All right, welcome to another episode of the Fair Chase podcast. Today, I'm sitting down, I guess, virtually with Dan Staton. Staton, am I pronouncing that right? From Elk Shape. Dan, thanks for coming on and chatting with me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, excellent. So I've been following you, Dan, for a while, following some of the workout stuff you do, some of the hunts you did. It looks like you just got back from a pretty epic bear hunt. With your bow. So you got that thing cut up and in the freezer and all taken care of yet, or where you at?
Yeah, I just, what is today? Monday. I killed a bear in Idaho on Thursday, right before dark. And I didn't get back to camp till 2 a.m. And it was mainly because of where the bear died. It's the worst imaginable place where a bear, and I actually knew that.
Yeah.
This little abandoned logging road, and I mean it's gated.
Yeah.
It's not very long, so people usually don't think to go check it, and it's
Right.
kind of my tertiary spot for a bear hunt. Like it's where I'll end the last, if I haven't seen a bear at my primary or secondary, I scoot down to this spot the last 20 minutes of daylight, because it does have a ton of bear crap on the road, and I can tell the bears have been using it. It's secluded, but on the shelf off that side is about 1,000-foot drop off, and it's mostly cliffs, but the bears don't mind. I think they did in there, to be honest. So yeah, we found the bear fast. It was a good shot, all that stuff, but it's just like, we had to tie the bear's limbs off with paracords so that we could actually break it down so it wouldn't go tumbling down the mountain any further. So it was a rodeo, but I mean, that's what we live for.
Yeah, that's what you're training for. That's what you're shooting for. And so it was public land, it sounds like, with your bow. So I just got back from a bear hunt in Montana. With my rifle. But it was places we'd never been. We got one, pulled one out of there, and it's actually still in my freezer. I still have to finish it up with the butcher paper and everything. But I was surprised. I mean, you got right in on that with your bow, and like looked like it was no problem. I mean, obviously there's a lot of work that goes into it, but what's your how are you getting so close to him with your bow?
So listen up, rifle hunter. I don't like you guys to be hunting.
Fair.
And I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I don't really like you guys hunting where I hunt.
Yeah.
And I saw 4 rifle hunters this year, and I've never seen rifle hunters where I hunt before. And I have several spots, but you guys annoy me because you got these custom made guns, and honestly, you're pretty deadly. Like, you see a bear, you shoot the bear.
Right.
I see the bear, and my hunt just starts when yours ends.
Yep.
But I don't want your listeners to get mad at me, because I will say I love that there's rifle hunters out there.
Yeah.
When seasons are coinciding with, like in Idaho, we have like cougar was open as well as wolf. And honestly, a rifle hunter is super effective on those predators. And at the end of the day, we are predator hunting, trying to help manage that equation. So mad respect to rifle hunters. I just prefer to do it with the bow. I like getting at ground level with bears. It's just, to me, it's way more exciting, although I threaten to quit every year because the stalks get blown and things get foiled. And I feel like, how did I ever do this before?
What's up? We are going to thank a few of these sponsors that help make this beautiful show a reality for all of you. So here we go. So a big reason, I would say, to why we're so successful and we have so many bucks on the wall is because we use HuntWise. HuntWise is a GPS mapping app that you can download on any phone, any platform. You can look up public land huntings, ORV trails. You can get the weather. They actually have a HuntCast 2.0 that they teamed up with Jeff Sturgis to make. It's awesome. You need to check this thing out. Go to HuntWise, download the app.
I feel like if you go into the woods without optics, it's like going into the woods without pants on. Would you agree with that?
To a point.
To a point. We are huge fans of running binoculars, spotting scopes, and different things when we hunt, even whitetail. I bring binoculars out every time I go. We choose Vortex Optics because they make the best glass in the business. They have an amazing warranty, super clear glass, super helpful people that work there.
Also, if you want to rep some sweet Vortex swag like this warm shirt on a nice fall day, head over to Vortex Wear, thank you, and use the promo code TFC20 for 20% off your purchase. Saddle game, you need to be in it. If you haven't been in it yet, then you don't know what you're missing.
Yeah.
Trophy Line Tree Sales makes some of the best saddles in the industry. They have 3 different platforms that we use and that are awesome.
I want to make a quick plug for the Wingman with a couple steps. You can take one less stick, and it's like a combination of a stick and a platform. I've been exclusively hunting out of it this year, and my mobile setup is so sweet. I'm very proud of it.
Awesome.
I highly recommend the Wingman system.
If you're ready to pull the trigger on that and you want to get with James and do the Wingman, head over to their website and you can save yourself 10% on the purchase. TFC10 will get you that. I like to think I single-handedly got James to switch to compound again, but I'd probably be a liar and everyone would call me out on that. We shoot prime bows. We think they're awesome. Great accuracy, super shootable.
Made here in Michigan.
Made in Michigan, so we love that. It's hard to complain.
That's where Jared was made. So
surprisingly,
we like that. Yeah.
You're welcome. So go check out these prime bows.
We are of a firm belief that the arrow is the lifeblood of the archery industry. We've said it 1,000 times. But in all seriousness, we are huge fans of arrows that are durable, that fly well, and that kind of make up for some of my inaccuracies in the way that I shoot. So we shoot Vector custom arrows.
The hammer.
The hammer.
That's Thor.
They are made in Wisconsin by our buddy Isaac. Great arrows. And if you want to go and get yourself some, have a little bit of a discount, use TFC10 for 10% off. Or call Isaac up and tell him we sent you.
Mm-hmm. You want his phone number? Comment below.
Yep, comment below.
So, yeah. But to get close, yeah, it's a matter of well, a lot of rifle hunters like yourself will probably shoot across canyons. Like it's only a 300-400 yard shot for you across the canyon. For me, I got to cross that canyon, and you can't glass bears on the same side as you. It's too steep. So we glass canyons. We have primary spots, secondary, tertiary, like I mentioned. And the strategy there is simple. At a master vantage, it could be a 5-6 mile vantage. We're hunting there in the morning and the midday, because if we see a bear pop out for 5, 10, 15 minutes, there's a good chance they're going to pop out later the day in the same spot. So we need minutes, if not hours, to get to them. And so finding bears isn't the hardest, getting to them. Secondary spots we move to around 4:30.
Okay.
And that's going to be like bear 30 is what we call it. And those are spots where it's not as good of advantage, but it's still really good. And if you see a bear, you can get there in, say, under an hour.
Yeah,
and
sure.
You'll have time. And then the tertiary, we hardly hunt because we usually see a bear at the secondary. But if we do the tertiary deal, it's going to be basically still hunting logging roads that are really gated and niche, and you're usually have a hike of shame or a walk of shame out when it gets too dark to see your pins, and you're out of legal light and you walk back and bump bears. And so that's kind of our strategy, but they all work well. I've baited bears. I've never hunted bears with hounds, but I prefer spot and stalk. That's my absolute favorite way to do it with a bow.
Yeah, it was cool. This was my first spot and stalk bear hunt. I'm in Michigan, so I done the hound thing 2 years ago last fall. That was my first hound hunt. Last fall was over bait for the first time in the UP of Michigan. And so once I first got that first bear, I was like, I got to keep doing this. So this was my first spot and stalk one that I'd ever done. And that was what I was thinking the whole time, because I'm actually usually with you. I usually just prefer to hunt with my bow. It's just what I like to do. Like you said, you get close, you get to it's harder. And obviously, like when one hunt ends, you hear a lot of guys say that the bow hunter's hunt begins because you're making moves, trying to get ahead of it and everything else. But that's, spending a week bear hunting with a rifle. We went early. It was tough. Like it was tough to lay eyes on a bear where we were. So my bear actually was 70 yards and I had kicked him up off the road, just feeding where there was actually any kind of green grass and some of those glacier lilies. And so mine was hardly the across canyon shot, and actually probably would have been more comfortable at where I was shooting with my bow than where I with my rifle. But yeah, it was just such a blast. And like I said, just going into this podcast, I was checking out some of the adventures you'd been up to. It was pretty cool. And if I understand it right, you do a lot of work. We'll get into the working out and training and things, but you do there's a pretty cool Elk Shape camp. It looks like you're just finishing up and you're starting to prep for next year, but tell me a little bit about what this camp, what these are all about.
Okay. Yeah. So we started doing Elk Shape camps about 5 years ago, and it was kind of I just threw it out there. I still had a real job. I was operating a gym, and I was making content. I've been in the hunting industry since 2007. So I'm not a stranger, but I was really kind of pushing the digital stuff. And I threw it out there that, hey, I want to try an Elk Shape camp. I have room for 20. I'm going to open up registration this Friday. I'm going to charge a couple $100. Let me know, sign up if you want to come.
Yeah.
Thing sold out in an hour. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, we better deliver. So that first camp was very much fitness, nutrition driven.
Sure.
I did have Dirk Durham of Phelps Game Calls show up, and I did call my buddy Ryan Lampert and said, hey, come talk backcountry gear. So they came and helped me, but it was a hit, and I really enjoyed doing them, to be honest with you, because it's a smorgasbord of elk hunters. We had guys that were seasoned vets just looking for like that one nugget to help elevate. We had guys that were completely brand new, knew nothing, didn't know what they didn't know.
Right.
And since then we've done probably 20 camps, somewhere between 4 or 5 a year. And I'm here to tell you, like, it doesn't get old. We still get a variety of experience levels. And my job is kind of to sniff out the attendees' weaknesses. And I'm fairly decent at doing that, and then writing them a blueprint to work towards the season. And so we only do 4 or 5 camps a year, and we try to get them done in the first quarter, maybe early second quarter, because we want them to have time to work on the prescription that we give them. Some guys, it's like, all right, for you have everything under the sun to work on. So here's how you don't neglect anything. Here's kind of a prescription for chipping away. Some guys just have like 1 or 2 weaknesses, and it's like really obvious. And so for those guys, we really have them target like, hey, you have a ridiculous dose of target panic. When the shot really counts, you're going to be doing these shooting under duress drills. You're going to work with this coach. You're going to do this online course with Joel Turner. And then this is your prescription of arrows. Here's how many 3D shoots you need to do this year. All your shots with a backpack, no more flip flops in the backyard, elk calling, elk biology, behavior, and then e-scouting. Most people suck at e-scouting. They think e-scouting is dropping pins on their phone on Onyx. I'm here to tell you that is not. But ultimately it boils down to separation is in the preparation when you're hunting elk on public land. I still do blue collar style. I'm not blue collar, but blue collar style average ass hunts on public land. So people see my truck, and they're like, message me, and they're like, hey, I saw you there. And I'm like, yeah, you did, because I'm out there cutting my teeth too. I still love shooting a raghorn bull on my 7th day of my 7-day hunt as a buzzer beater. I get excited about that.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to go to ranches and have an opportunity to shoot really mature big bulls that are unpressured. But I don't want to hunt with a guide. I want to hunt solo. I want to do my thing. And I think more people can relate to that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a reality for most people. And we would agree, we're obviously out east of you in Michigan, but we do the same thing with whitetail deer. I mean, obviously you want to go hunt these big chunks of private land with these, 170-inch whitetail deer. But I am, so happy that if I go camp and come up with a 120, 115, 120-inch buck, I'm going to be on, 6 day. I'm happy as you can be. So I can definitely appreciate that. For these Elk Shape camps, just thinking, applying it to my own life. So I teach at night at a college here, and I often will see, in the curriculum that I'll teach, there'll be common threads that students struggle with, right? So it's like, I do business law. So the commerce clause, students somehow just have a hard time understanding exactly what this is. So as I've been looking at your Elk Shape camp, I got to imagine there's a common thread where no matter if they're new or old, there's some, thing that people continually like, that's the thing that's like most common that people have a struggle with. What would you think that would be?
I'll just keep it real. It's a laundry list. You're not as fit as you thought you were. Yeah. You're not as good archer as you thought you were when there's pressure. Like my first thing I do at our camps is I have all my subject matter expert team circle you, and you shoot one arrow at a target that you said was your maximum effective range. A lot of guys put 70. I mean, it seems like a pretty safe bet in the backyard or at the local archery range, 70 yards, right?
Yeah.
But things change when there's 8 strangers that you know of on social, online, watching you. People get nervous. So you're not as fit as you thought you were. You're not as good under pressure as you thought you were. And you suck at elk calling. You overcommit too much time to one particular spot. You spend too much time getting there, and elk are nomadic, and you spend too much time chasing elk that are not there. You take naps at midday. You don't hunt all day, every day. You're afraid of the dark. I mean, the list goes on. So like, I'll sniff any of those things out. We'll identify them. We'll address them. And the cool thing is that there's ways to mitigate all of these. And I'm not as fit as I want to be. I'm not as good a shot as I want to be. Hence the work ethic that I promote, because it is a day-to-day grind, working on the things or working on the glaring weaknesses. So there's a laundry list, man, but we'll sniff them out.
Are you getting good at sniffing them out? Like, can you look at somebody walking in and just see and know?
No. I don't judge a book by its cover at all. Learned that a long time ago. But it does take a full 3 days to kind of set a plan for each attendee and talk to my team as well every night when camp's over. And it's a lot of work to do these camps. And honestly, it's very rewarding. I love seeing pictures in the fall come back with guys that, punched their first elk tag ever. They killed a spike, they killed a cow, which we tell them, hey, if you've never killed an elk, like, understand your parameters. The biggest thing I see with new elk hunters or elk hunters who haven't punched their tag, and keep in mind, I struggled with the archery elk hunting learning curve. I killed an elk 5 minutes into my first rifle elk hunt. The next year I got into bow hunting, and I did not punch a tag till 5 years later. Okay. And it wasn't a lack for trying, and it certainly wasn't a lack of time in the field. It was just, I hadn't developed my game yet. All that is to say is, like, man, you need to not look at Instagram October 1st and scroll through all the successful people and you're like, I'm a failure, I suck, I quit, or et cetera, et cetera. That will rob you of your joy. If you go into the season setting the parameters of what a successful season looks like to you, that's what's going to be important, because some guys have never heard an elk bugle. Well, if you get into bugles, you just had a successful elk season. You just drove from upper, Michigan, 24 hours and found elk, got into elk and almost got a shot, and you stayed out there, you survived, you thrived, and you came home in one piece. Bro, that's a successful elk hunt. Maybe you didn't get your meat yet, but you will. It's a process. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah, I love that, because, and we talk about this a lot, but if you think about life or hunting or whatever in those terms, there's not really ever failing. It's always just building, and so every time you build and you advance, or you make, whether it's an inch or a foot or a mile forward, you're still winning. There's no losing, and so maybe you don't kill an elk, maybe you get into them, maybe you find a wallow and you understand how elk use a wallow, right, at certain times of years, or whatever you're doing out there. That's all adding to this, these things that you're building up. And I feel like that way, you think about it that way, it's a lot less pressure when you're hunting, and it's a lot more fun.
That's a fact, man.
All right. So you've doing these camps a couple of years now. You sold out pretty quick. You're done. You're already filling up next year. You're putting a plan together. It sounds like, in the night and after these 3 days for these folks. It sounds very similar to what you would do if you were a trainer. You meet somebody, you check out where they're at physically, you put a plan together for them. Is that where kind of this idea came from?
100%. At the end of the day, I'm just a coach.
Right.
And that's what I've spent most of my years is writing programs and helping people identify their weaknesses and make them their strengths. And I don't think it's any different when it comes to elk hunting. I think you can do the same thing.
Yeah. Are you, so just tell me about your background. Where do you come from? Did you do? What do you do now? What does it look like?
So I think I'm just basically a personal trainer out of high school, managed health clubs for years while putting myself through undergrad and grad, all exercise, physiology, science degrees. Had my mark set on being a strength and conditioning coach, specifically NFL.
Okay.
I love football.
You play football?
I did, but I'm not big. But I did. I always told my dad, if you could have married a woman that was not 5 foot, I would have been taller and I would have had a chance to play in the NFL. That's not true. I'm not that fast, but I love football. I love contact sports. I love the physicality of football and I love training for football. That's what I did. Turns out strength and conditioning coaches, specifically football, college and pro, do not have time off in the fall. That's when the season, and I had already become completely addicted to elk hunting when I was 20 years old. So I had to pivot, and I did pivot, and I ended up still pursuing like sports performance, opened up a speed school in Boise, Idaho, trained youth athletes, collegiate athletes, a few pros here and there. Then I moved home, opened up a CrossFit gym. That's a long story, but I ran that CrossFit gym for 11 years. It was called CrossFit Spokane Valley. And I had 2 flags. I also had another company called Fast Track Performance. Mm-hmm. So we trained athletes for sports and we also trained adults for CrossFit. And then I sold that. I'm terrible. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I sold the gym to the right guy who could take over and do it well. And I decided to try doing Elk Shape digital media stuff full time. And here we are. I guess I'm still doing it. So it's working out.
You have a house around, you're not living in a box. So like, it looks like things are going okay. That had to be a big jump. I mean, that's a big leap of faith there.
Yeah, I think I did it strategically. I mean, I was doing Elk Shape since 2013.
Yeah.
Before that, I owned a company called Train to Hunt, which was online training for hunting with a partner. So Elk Shape had stuff in place, but I did get kind of more serious about Elk Shape and started a podcast, I think 5.5 years ago. And I was doing YouTube and social media stuff and writing, but I got pretty darn serious about it after that first Elk Shape camp. I still own the gym, but when that thing sold out, I was like, hey, I like fitness, but I like elk hunting. Elk hunting is at the top.
Yeah.
Is there a way where I could not ruin my passion for elk hunting, but just kind of help people and do both? And eventually sold the gym. And I honestly don't know how long I'll do Elk Shape. I guess I'll do it as long as people
keep showing up and listening.
And if they don't like it, I'll just go like drive a garbage truck because, I'm not a money chaser. I'm a time chaser. I literally just want to have the freedom and flexibility in my schedule to kind of have time for the stuff I'm passionate about.
Yeah, it seems like you're a bit of an entrepreneur too. So, I mean, it's hard for me to believe you're going to be out, driving a garbage truck instead of starting your other thing. It's funny. I had come across you, I think, years and years ago, living in New Jersey in school, probably right when you started.
Where in New Jersey?
I was in Bergen County. So, I went to school in Newark and lived in Bergen County, which was not just, I didn't have much chance to hunt. So I spent a lot of time when I wasn't studying, engaging in, I guess you could call it, the fancy way would be engaging with social media content, but it would basically just being spending on time online. Because it was like, I can't hunt. I'm like always in this library, but I see these, and so I ended up finding you there. So it's funny that how far you've kind of come and all the places you've been since then.
That's awesome. I did the speed school stuff in Fair Lawn, New Jersey.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know exactly where that is.
Okay. And so I've spent quite a bit of time in Fair Lawn working with athletes and training weeks at a time for a couple years. And so got to be honest, man, the East Coast is not my flavor. I really struggle out there when you don't see mountains and there's toll bridges everywhere and traffic and buildings. I don't know how people do it.
No, and I've said this on our podcast before, but I hunted prior. So this is law school. I hunted quite a bit prior, but when I went there, it was like, because I had so little access to it, because I missed the woods so badly. When I came back, I was like, I ended up being obsessed with it. Like it like turned it up to 11 after that. Yep. And so no, Fair Lawn, I think I had a train stop in Fair Lawn on the way to, I had to take the stupid train to school. My first day of school, we got married, my wife and I. That night we drove to New Jersey from where we got married in Illinois, because I had school like 2 days later. So we get in the car, first couple of days we're living in New Jersey, I take like the practice train run, because in Michigan, we're not like, we don't have trains and subways and things like that. And so I'm like, all right, I'm terrible at following directions. This is going to be a disaster, but I'm going to go do 2 days where I just practice getting to school and back. Right.
That's smart, man.
Right. Well, you would think it was smart, because I did it and I was successful. The first day of school, I get on the train and I'm like, everything changes because it's not the weekend and there's just people everywhere. And I'm like, I don't know where to go. So I find this guy and I'm like, hey, can you get me to Newark Penn Station? I didn't know it, but there's also a New York Penn Station. So he's like, all right, take this train. So I get on the train and I'm like, oh, this doesn't seem right. It doesn't look familiar, but I guess this is where he told me to go. I walk out and I look and I'm literally in Madison Square Garden. Like that's where the train stop comes out. So I'm like, I missed my first day of school and I come home. I'm like, Laura, my wife, I'm like, I don't know. I can't even make it to class. Like what is
that's
school
law school?
Like? Yeah.
Like L1?
Yeah. L1. Yeah. 1L. Yeah. And so the next day I'm like, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm going to do it right. I did the same thing twice, 2 days in a row. I'm like, I get home and I'm like, Laura, I'm never going to graduate. I don't, I've missed 2 days. Who knows what everybody learned in those 2 days. That's probably like the key to their success, So no, I was glad to get out of the East Coast and kind of get into more open spaces. But, I do have respect for some of those people. Hey, you got to grind in a very different way there.
Yeah, dude, it's a mindset, and I mean, mad respect, but you stressed me out missing the first 2 days of L1. Like, I mean, that would just, I'm so tightly wound and OCD neurotic. Like I would probably fall apart knowing that I missed 2 days of instruction.
My whole back muscles, I just remember feeling, when they get like that stress tightness in your back, it's like, it was bad, but now I'm done. I did graduate. It worked out. I did travel through Fair Lawn fairly often. So it's good. No, so that's cool. So you're excited about, it seems to me, meeting you, entrepreneurship and coaching. And it's cool to see that you're kind of using that in social media. You do a ton of videos and stuff, and you're coaching these people through. But a lot of Elk Shape is more than that too. I mean, you do a podcast, you do gym stuff. Talk to me a little bit about some of the other things that you're up to.
Well, the podcast to me is kind of, I love doing them. Hence, like I'm enjoying every second of our conversation because I get to know people beyond a surface level. Yeah. And I really enjoy that. And I try to get people on that aren't the recycled guest list on everyone else's podcast. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I try to find those diamonds in the rough. I'll talk to anyone. And I also don't turn down podcast invitations. I say that, but I might have to soon. But I mean, I go on a lot of podcasts and I try to not repeat myself, and I try to get to know, like you, I'm trying to get to know you right now. And I'm enjoying it, James. But the podcast for me is once a week, and try to mix in a flavor of, look, I'm selling hard work. You want to be an elk hunter on public land. You found your podcast. You want to leverage it so that you're a better husband, a better dad, a better employee or employer, that you work out, that you eat right, that you shoot, and you're consistent and you're disciplined, and your life's better because of elk hunting. Your life shouldn't be worse because of elk hunting. If it is, then you're doing it wrong. Yeah. And so I really believe in that message. It's very niche. Like, obviously, like, we're talking about dissecting the hunting population down to those that are just passionate about pretty much archery elk hunting. It's not a huge net, but we do get a crap load of downloads and get a lot of feedback, and I'm honored to do it. As far as the training programs, we're continuing to add that to those programs. And I've learned that people don't do well. Like, I don't sell 1-year programs. I just don't think people stay true to them. Sure. So somewhere along the line, I figured out I'm just doing 30-day. I think I have one that's 90 days, but I'm like, just do 30 days. Are you going to see a tremendous amount of results in 30 days? Maybe, depending on how you eat, how you sleep, how you rest, how you recover, and the stimulus. But we continue to pump out new programs. It's all cross training. Yeah. I'm not a huge specificity guy when it comes to elk hunting. I'm more of a general physical preparedness type of an advocate. I feel like, an abundance of backpacking, rucking is cool because you definitely do that. It's elk hiking. But I like the idea of like mixing in not only the strength and the power, but, the coordination, the accuracy, the agility, the elasticity, plyometrics, interval conditioning, like a variety of stuff. So that training's fun and exciting, not lame, and that you are well-rounded when you get to the mountains. And ultimately, I want everyone to be limitless. I feel like I'm limitless, and maybe that sounds probably conceited, and I'm not conceited. I'm not saying like I'm limitless. I'm just saying, like, while I'm elk hunting, I don't really like stop and go, well, can I get over there? It's kind of like, no, I can do it. I've done it before. And that's probably some history of elk hunting in a lot of years, but like, I feel good, and I give her all I got every day, and it's working. So that's why we kind of make programs like that.
It's earned confidence at that point for you. I mean, I think that's the difference between doing it your first time or doing it for a long time, doing it with some training, doing it with decades of training going in. You can look at something and I was listening to a podcast with Cameron Haynes, and he talked about when he started running long distances, it would make hunting a lot easier for him, because he would say, well, this is a 13-mile stretch of wilderness area or whatever. Well, I know that I can run that. I know what that's like to run across that amount of space. So all of a sudden this big space feels smaller because your experience with it. And just for a guy that comes from the East, so to speak, I guess, for the Midwest region, going west and hunting is very different. And it is mentally, I loved it, but it is much harder than you even would know before going, right? So you get there and you're like, I've trained, this is great, but you start taking your whole pack of all your stuff for the week up the mountain, and you're like, it's like, this. And I like what you said about using this to be better in other areas of life, because that mental toughness, that fortitude, is the way that we talk about it in my family with my daughter, is not a lot of people have it. And not even a lot of hunters have it. So when you said niche, you're talking to a certain select group of people who are not your weekend hunters, not the guys that go out, have some beers, and maybe hit the woods a couple times in the year. Like, these are guys that they want to get better. They want to push hard. They want to find that, that adventure a lot of times, for whatever that looks like for them.
Yeah. And I think it's cool, however you want to hunt, whatever your goals are, act accordingly, train accordingly. For me, obviously, I take it pretty serious. And even if I didn't have ElkShape, I still, like, looking back over the last 21 elk seasons, is, man, I quit jobs to go elk hunt for a whole month.
Right.
I hired people to train at my gym so that I could leave and hope that it's all, like, doesn't go down the shitter when I get back, business wise. And I've sacrificed with my wife and my kids, and they all are on board with that. I need this. I do this. This is an addiction. This is what makes me tick. This is how I feel alive. And this is how I get clarity. This is how I go get time with the creator. This is special. And you're going to get a better Dan Staton at the end of September when I come out of this little elk hunting hole. And I do treat it very serious. And I don't think you have to do that. But man, if you did, you might really have a better experience, and you might make other things in your life better as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like that because it's priority setting, right? And everybody's life is what you build it to be. And if you love to elk hunt, or you love whatever, you build your life around these major things, and then you fill in the rest as you go. And so that's pretty cool. As you've done this, you've been hunting elk for a long time, certainly. What was the hardest thing for you to learn? Like, what was the thing that you had the hardest time just getting right?
Well, I'm still learning. I'm still a student.
Sure. Up to this point.
Yeah. One of the biggest successes for me, beyond some of the most basic fundamental navigational skills in the mountains, like I used to do it all wrong. I would go down a mountain, cross a creek, go up a mountain.
Yeah.
And elk don't travel like that at all, ever. They are lazy suckers. They take exactly the path of least resistance. And I know that sounds basic, but that's like one of the first things I did wrong, was that it's kind of hard to get in front of elk or manipulate when you're straight up always struggling to keep up with them, because, and not that a lot of people can keep up with them, but like I really couldn't even keep up with them when I traveled wrong. But there was a point in time where, and my dad is my best friend. I love him to death. But there was a point in time, because we were elk hunting partners, where I finally kind of put a piece to the puzzle that changed everything for me. And I'll tell you this much. My dad and I would hunt hard for several days in a row, and then he would take a rest day, and on those rest days, year after year, consistently, I would go and kill an elk the first day that he was gone. And finally it clicked, and I'm like, I'm better at elk hunting solo than I am with a team.
Yeah.
And it's just my personality, but I make decisions faster. I don't have to explain where I'm going and the rendezvous point and when you can expect me back. It's like, if I want to go after that bull the last 15 minutes of daylight and it's 1,000-foot drop, I don't have to text, inReach, radio. I'm going to go do it.
Yeah.
And that right there changed my game, where I really became in love with solo elk hunting. And then actually what we ended up working out a deal with my dad, and my dad's killed the elk solo, but for the next several years, I would be like, I'm going to go fill both my Idaho elk tags. Yes, I used to be able to get 2 Idaho elk tags.
Yeah, must be nice.
That ship sailed. Let's just say that. When I tag out, I will spend the rest of the month being your dedicated caller. And that worked extremely well, to where we both get our elk tags punched at the end of the year, at the end of the season, working that way. And man, that's what changed my game. So I always encourage people to consider solo elk hunting. It's definitely, it's not a social event. It's not, it can be really daunting, especially, I can't tell you how many bulls I've had to break down and pack out by myself in places where I'm cursing myself. I'm like, you effing idiot. You're going to lose this meat. Like, I've had to do emergency, go the wrong direction just to get the meat in a cooler spot so that I can save it. And the meat's everything to me.
Yeah.
Everything to me. Like, I love eating elk meat. And so, yeah, man, solo elk hunting is not for everybody, but dang, it's pretty cool when all your failure and all your successes are on your shoulders.
I've found hunting alone the first night always to be kind of the weirdest in terms of when you're by yourself. It seems like you've done this a lot, where it probably is not, where you don't even think about it as much anymore. But when you were starting out, did you struggle with going out alone? Was that weird?
Dude, I went out alone a few times before I finally like really clicked, but
Yeah.
I remember in like 2001, my dad couldn't get this late, it was opening weekend, and it was in North Idaho, and it opened August 30th. And I just remember he couldn't get the time off. He was saving his time off for like the good,
Sure. Yeah.
And I was like, well, I already quit my job, so I'm going. And that was like my first time where I put a tent out. I had to get up in the dark. I had to hike up a really steep, thick, brushed out, wet, cross a creek, get up there with the elk bugling. And man, I bugled in a bull that first morning to like 20 yards. He had like cows, and I don't know how many. I didn't see all of them. He's a nice 6-point bull. And I actually shot at him. And when I mean I shot at, my string hit my bugle tube because I was calling for myself. And then I had a little string and I put it in the wrong spot. And as soon as I had him at 20, I shot, and I hear that horrible sound of my string slapping my bugle tube. My arrow did not make it to him. And I don't know, all the being alone, all the being afraid of the dark and being scared, all that goes away.
Yeah.
When that happens. And it's like this turmoil of loneliness and doubt does not matter to me because of what just happened.
Exactly.
And I want that to happen again. I'm willing to put up with all this other nonsense. And the one thing I will tell the listeners, and I think I've said this on my podcast, is like, don't go to the mountains with skeletons in your closet and hunt solo. So let's say like my wife and I get in a huge fight. I'm going elk hunting for the whole month, and I'm an a-hole about it. And I'm not a good dad. I'm not a good husband. And I'm selfish and self-absorbed. I'm going to reflect on that in the mountain when I'm hunting solo 10 times more than if I was hunting with you, James, and we were just having awesome, cool bro conversations at campfire at night. Like when you're by yourself, you ain't got nothing but time to think, and you're not elk hunting 24 hours a day. In fact, how many hours are you actually hunting? How much hours of daylight are in September? It's dwindling day by day. So there's a lot of time to stop, think, and reflect, which is actually, I've grown to love that time. That's what I meant by clarity. I get a lot of clarity. I look at a couple of things and what I've done, what I've said, my actions, and there's some things to be corrected, and there's a spotlight on those things. So solo hunting, man, it is therapeutic in so many ways.
Well, it's funny you say that because I think it's harder, and people have a harder and harder time being alone anyways, or in a quiet anyways. During the week, a night a week, I lead a Bible study for younger guys. And I'm surprised by how much they're unable to have quiet. Like they can't even sleep with quiet. They have to have a podcast going in the background, or music going in the background, or something. And I wonder about what that means, where that comes from, and the implications of what those implications will have. Like what's going to happen for these guys down the road? Why can't they have quiet? Why can't they be alone with themselves? And the more I'm exposed to this, the more I think it's just hard to be with yourself sometimes. Like you said, if you have skeletons in your closet, anything you that is undealt with, that is on your mind, on your heart, there's no hiding from it. And it feels like it's yelling when you're out in the mountain alone. It feels like it's loud. And I just wonder, what that does to a person when you don't have that quiet time to deal with it.
I don't know. Honestly, I think I was in the Word today, Philippians chapter 4, verse 5, somewhere in there. But the bottom line was like, guard your heart. That's what I got out of that scripture. And I'm like, as that applies to this conversation, I think you do need to guard your heart with all the distractions, like having a podcast on in the background at all times, or having music, or laying in bed but grabbing your phone and scrolling, or I got to go watch this YouTube video. Like the digital media and all the distractions are out there for you to not really think about real stuff.
Right.
And so I always encourage everyone to guard your heart, myself included. You need to guard your heart. That really spoke to me today. And I'm like, I want to teach my kids how to guard their heart because they're at public school right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of stuff that they're talking about at age 5 and 7 that blows my mind. Like, you know, they know what TikTok is, even though they don't have a phone. They know what Instagram is. They know what YouTube is. Actually, they know YouTube very well. I've had to block YouTube everywhere I can. And I'm kind of a YouTuber,
Right.
You know, it's, guard your heart, go solo elk hunting, be still, listen, be quiet. There's a dude who did that a lot. He would like sneak away from his disciples and he would get up on the mountain and he would be quiet and he would be still. And I feel like he's probably showing us best practices. And so it's something like a little nugget to take away.
Yeah. Yeah. That quiet time. And if he needed it, you know, I'm pretty sure everybody else is going to need it too.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about. And that's, you know, you said you get clarity when you hunt, and that's immediately what sprung to my mind, whether you're hunting or you're just out alone in the woods. Obviously I would prefer to be hunting, but that time alone is critical. So we're heading into the summer. You're obviously training hard. September's not that far away. If you think about it, are you physically where you want to be?
Yeah, it's 80 days out, but who's counting, right? Yeah, I'm always in good shape. Like I own a shop in the backyard that I built. It's not a shop, it's a gym. It's actually spoiled. It's a dream come true to have a training facility in my backyard.
Yeah.
It's not commercial. I don't have clients. I don't want clients. It's just my dojo. So I'm weaker than I've been in a long time right now. I've been hunting a lot. Turkeys, Alaska bear, Idaho bear. And then before that, I had to travel all over the country doing Elk Shape camps. So continuity wise, like I still get workouts in, but I'm really excited about the next 80 days where I'm going to do an abundance of strength training and do it proper and periodize. I'm going to do an abundance of interval and conditioning pieces and trail run and shoot my bow a lot. And I already do all those things more than your average guy. But yeah, all about training, shooting, and spending as much time off as possible with my family, doing whatever they want to do, not what I want to do. So I didn't list off scouting, going to cool mountains and checking and finding breeding benches and putting out trail cameras over wallows. I may get to do a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But I've grown to know that that's not worth the cost. That's not worth doing when you have a family, to save all that for when I'm going to be gone.
Yeah, because you're going to be gone for a while. You're going to be spending a lot of time away. And no, I've wrestled finding that balance as well. How many hours a day are you working out?
I work out hard, not long.
Okay.
And there's a difference. So yesterday I put off working out the entire day and I was in a terrible mood and I needed to make my kids dinner and my wife was not home. And I was like, so I made them dinner and I was starving, but I'm like, you don't get to eat till you work out. Like you need to do something every day. Like don't squander. So I went out to the gym. I bet I worked out for 16 minutes and that was it. What I did was I threw some weight on a bench press. I warmed up a little bit and I just did as many reps as I could on a set of bench pressing. Like, I don't know, like my body weight, 165. And then I did as many hip back extensions as possible for my lower back and butt in between sets, never resting.
Yeah.
Then I grabbed a deadlift weight of 275, did as many reps as I could. And then in between sets, I would do a max set of push-ups. And I just did that back and forth 5 sets. And then I got on the ski erg and I went 30 seconds, 100% effort, 30 seconds, try not to die, rest, 5 rounds. And walked out of the gym 16 minutes later. I felt way better about myself. It wasn't the greatest workout of all time, but I did something. I'm going to be sore from it. I'm going to get an adaptation. There's just days like that, right?
Yeah.
Where 16 minutes is all I did, but it's better than 0 minutes.
I love that. And yeah, I love that. It sounds like being sore is important. Like you do try, is that what you're aiming for? And obviously not in a bad way. We don't need to get into that, but you're trying to feel it.
Yeah, no, I want the muscles full of blood. I want them to hit some sort of failure, some sort of like, I want to get a stimulus. I want to get a dividend later. I actually hate being sore because it's harder to get warmed up and train when your legs are mainly legs, when your legs are just so sore, but I'm just used to being sore, right? Like I've been sore since 2000, and it's fine. But no, man, I'm excited to like get back to some really good training. Maybe even make a preseason program. It won't be for this year, but I love training, writing, trying. It's a lab. We do experiments in there, and we're trying to. I love motivating people. I do think that we do a decent job at that, and it's not fake. I think they know it's authentic. Like, this is really who we are, and I love that.
Yeah, that's cool. So you're heading to the fall. You got elk hunting. You got any exciting hunts or any cool places you're headed?
I'm still waiting for some draw results, to be honest with you. And that would mean I have some tags secured. Like, I'm definitely going to Idaho. I do have a Montana General. Those 2 tags alone are more than enough for me to just have a great season and hit her hard. Montana's got a 6-week archery season. Idaho's got a 30-day. So between those 2 states, my home state of Washington, draw results aren't out yet, but I should end up with an over-the-counter tag like I always do in Washington. The question is will I be actually hunting it? I don't even know. I have 2 mule deer tags for November.
Nice.
And that's probably it, man. Honestly, elk is the priority, and everything else is kind of like, I usually chase antelope. We'll see about that.
That's right. You have some antelope out in Washington, right? And you're on the east side of the state.
We might have some antelope, but there's no hunting season, so I have to go to Wyoming, Idaho, Montana to chase antelope. So yeah.
So I mean, that's a couple bear trips in a year. You've got some elk, mule. That's a full year.
We should have a full freezer, definitely. We've been crushing what we have right now. We're getting like, I'm taking inventory, and I'm like, all right, a couple more barbecues, and we eat elk every day. Should hopefully be running out about the time season. And I love being out of elk meat going into elk season because it keeps my head on straight. Yeah. It ain't about a 306 point. It's about, you better get a bull on the ground, because like, Mama Bear don't care about antlers. She likes elk meat too.
Yeah, it's exactly. How do you like that? How'd that Alaska bear eat?
I donated that one to the guide. He wanted it, and I did not want to pay to get it shipped.
Yeah, right.
To Washington. I had 50 pounds of fish to bring home, and I knew I had a bear tag in Idaho, and I knew I'd get a bear. Well, I hoped I was get a bear, but yeah, that was a tough call too. But for bear meat specifically, first off, they always ask me like, well, what do you think about bear meat? I'm like, who cares what I think? You should try it. Honestly, it's so underrated. And I've always heard like people say like the guys that were out west, trapping, doing wild game hunting, like they'd kill the ungulates, for market hunting, but they would keep the bear meat to themselves. It's no wonder why. Like, it is a greasier, fattier meat, but if you were to order a steak at a restaurant, you're going to get a ribeye. You're going to get a T-bone.
Right.
That's a
you
juicy
want that
fat. It's going to be a delicious. So bear meat's really, really good, and the texture's really good. And I think people get tripped out over, worms or trichinosis, or it's just how you prepare it, like anything.
It is how I like the slow cook. I've talked about that a lot. I do like full shoulders on the smoker. But another way, if you're scared of like the trichinosis or whatever, like the sous vide, I've started to use for it. And it's like, if you're worried, just throw it in the sous vide where that it's cooked to X temperature, and then you can sear it, and it's just a delicious steak. I love bear. That's why I ask. The fat is sweet. I've got a jar of it in my fridge that we cook with, and we like eggs and stuff. So that's good to hear.
And when you shoot a big boar, like the one in Idaho, I didn't take great photos of it, but it was like a really good bear, and we couldn't take photos. We're on a cliff, but when you shoot a mature bear and you peel that hide back, I don't want to freak people out, but like my forearm's not small, but next to a bear's forearm, it's 2 to 3x the size of my meaty forearm. And I have meaty forearms. And then their shoulders are 2-3x my shoulder, and their chest is rippled. And then they don't even have a neck. It's just a straight line. Their thighs are so built. Like, it's cool to break down and butcher. It's fun to butcher bear meat straight up.
It does kind of look like a really strong dude, though, when you're cutting him up. It's like, but you're right. I mean, because it's just more like, I'm used to shooting deer. So when you like cut a deer open, you like, you know what to see. But once I started cutting up bears, it's like, that is totally a different, and they use totally different muscles than a deer does. I mean, they're digging muscles, and their front shoulders are just, like you said, they're just massive.
I would not want even a black bear to get a hold of me. When I looked at this bear, I was like, I would lose in a hand-to-hand fight. Your shoulders, your forearms, your power, your neck, your teeth. So much respect for bears. And I love bears, man. Like I want bears. I'm like a huge advocate for them to be on the landscape.
Yeah.
I just have seen too much damage to elk and deer calves and fawns, like literally with my own 2 eyes, to where, like, I killed this bear because of a fawn in distress call. That's how I killed this bear.
Right.
Like,
I saw that.
And he didn't hesitate. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't hesitate one step.
No.
That's not, that's a learned behavior. You know, maybe it's instinctual too, but like, they're a predator. Yes, they like grass, but that's just salad, man. That's fluff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do like the fact that bears live a long time. So they live on the landscape for a lot longer than ungulates. And they also are very good at producing. Like, reproducing is something that they're very good at. And that's why I think we'll always have a lot of bears. Honestly, even if we smack a few, we're not putting a dent on them.
No, they're just growing. I think I saw that they're the fastest growing big game animal right now. And what I like about them is that they're just unique. Like, deer, and I'm assuming elk don't have as much experience there. But they do like they have their deer trails. They kind of follow a pattern, and, but bears are just like, well, this bear decided to wake up and just do this for a while. And then he just decided to walk over there and, take a nap under a tree. And then they're just kind of like, each one has a very observable personality, which is cool.
I couldn't agree more. And they're fascinating animals. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever found bear dens, but like a couple places I hunt is just bear den mecca. So the spring's always good, and you always get a new crop of bears in there. And it's just like finding these bear dens and just blowing your mind how many months they spend in there.
Yeah.
And how they trick their body to just fall asleep, but not eat away at the muscle.
Yeah.
And the heart rates. Some sows are giving birth in the den, and then how they get their GI tract up and running in the spring, and how long that takes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then they slowly build up. And then, I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. I've been bear hunting a long time, and I just still love every second of it. I just like watching the mountains wake up too. Yeah. It's just, every day's new out there, and you see something. I mean, I could go on, but I love bear hunting.
My wife was telling me, she was reading this story about these guys had a cabin out in the woods, and during the winter they kept hearing this like rumbling below the house. Like, what is that noise? Almost sounds like snoring or something. They couldn't figure it out. Well, they had a mom and a bunch of cubs under their house, under the floorboards of their house, den up. And so they came out in the summertime or the springtime, but they were basically hearing these things, messing around in there all winter, which is crazy cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So, well, hey, we're coming up on time here, Dan, but I thank you for coming on. For people who are listening, who might want to check out Elk Camp, check out some of the videos, follow your podcast, do all the things, how can they get a hold of you? How can they follow along?
Pick your poison, Elk Shape. So YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, website, whatever.
What I would say is just put the quotes around Elk Shape on Google, and then just hit enter, and all your top things pop up. So
good.
It's easy to do.
Yay.
All right, man. Well, hey, thank you so much. Everybody go check them out. Dan, thanks again.